Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. And this is what you've been waiting for months. We've been talking about the T20 World Cup for what seems like a year since the last T20 World Cup took place in the UAE. We're a week away. Well, we're a week away from the Super 12 stage, but the T20 World Cup's already started. And to preview that, which is slightly weird because the games have already kicked off. We've got with us the one, the only Jarrod Kimber. Jarrod, welcome to Edges and Sledges.
I'll give you a great preview. I'm pretty sure Namibia is going to beat Sri Lanka.
I wonder what the odds were on that.
55
who put
runs.
money on that one?
Imagine if you bet on that 15 overs into Namibia's innings as well, when they were 90 odd for 6 and Visa had just got out. You would have got mad money for that.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting result. The UAE has given the Netherlands a pretty hard time as well, who scraped home by 1 wicket, I think, with 3 balls remaining. So an interesting start. But maybe we go to an announcement first, because as you guys know, we mentioned last week that the last show was the last one on the IVM Podcast Network, and Jarrod runs a podcast network as well. So what's going on?
Well, I can announce that you're on my podcast network. I don't know if you all know. I don't know if you've all seen the WhatsApps. But yeah, you're joining 99.94. So huge for us to have you guys to come across. And, we're very thankful that you have, and good fun. So for those who don't know what 99.94 is, the majority of our podcasts are team-based. Which is essentially they are the name of the team on 99.94. So you guys have to form a team going ahead. But we've got a couple of other shows. Obviously, I've got some of my own shows. We've got a new one that we're coming up very soon. And it's huge for us to be able to bring you guys across and, India's premier fan multi-continent cricket podcast.
Yeah, and I mean, we couldn't be more excited. I mean, 99.94 is a great concept. It's cricket focused. We're all about cricket. We're all about podcasting. So thank you for having us, and we're looking forward to this new collaboration. We've probably gone on a little bit too long about all the admin stuff, to be honest. But let's get stuck into the T20 World Cup preview. It seems like we were only here a year ago talking about who's going to win this, right? And I think we're going to try and do this a little bit differently, because we want to keep this to around an hour. We're going to ask Jarrod to describe the teams, the strengths, the weaknesses, their recent form, how that's been going. I'll then come to Ashwin for what he thinks is the X factor that this team's got, and whether it's a player or whether it's a facet of their cricket. And then I'll come to Varun, because Varun's actually he's probably got the best predictions on this podcast. He predicted actually that Rishabh Pant wouldn't make the 15 for the 2019 World Cup, but would join halfway through. And I mean, that's not bad. So he's our predictions guy. Who do we start with? Maybe we go. Do we go alphabetically?
I wouldn't remember them any other way, but it depends on how you've
maybe
got them listed down in front of you.
Maybe not alphabetically.
I would love to not have to start with Australia, so let's go with a different.
But it's Afghanistan, actually.
Oh yeah, I guess so.
If you know your alphabet.
That's true.
And he doesn't.
It's clearly hard for myself.
Okay, what we should probably do is, because it's a 2-stage tournament, right? And stage 1's ongoing. We should probably do 2 minutes quickly on. Jarrod, who do you think is going to make it through the groups and make it into the Super 12? So,
actually, sorry, who would you have thought makes it to the Super 12 before yesterday, and who do you think now? Does that change?
I certainly would have thought Sri Lanka. I still think Sri Lanka will make it through. I was sort of not sure with Namibia or Netherlands, based on the fact that I think Netherlands is a better team, but I think Namibia is used to harder, faster, bouncier pitches. And, it's funny, we've seen so many Asian teams do well in World Cups, because they come out with a bunch of really good spinners. But I think anyone had actually factored in that Namibia have been playing on maybe not Australian style pitches, but at least Australian light pitches for a very long time. And, they've faced a lot of very fast South African bowlers and all that sort of stuff that even the Netherlands and Scotland are sitting there going, they're used to green tops and different kinds of wickets, right? So I was a bit unsure of which team I wanted there. But I think if I had to put money down, I would have put my money on Netherlands and Sri Lanka from that group. The other group is an absolute, wild situation. There's a part of me that almost wants to say Ireland and Scotland, because West Indies are in such disarray at the moment. But I do think that the West Indies are probably good enough to get past one of those teams. But I wouldn't be able to give you a good tip on which one that is. Scotland haven't been batting very well recently, and Ireland are a bit up and down in T20 cricket. But you look at West Indies and you're like, there's a lot of guys that have to fire here, and they've just picked a guy who doesn't play professional cricket anymore. I mean, that's what Ireland had to do in the last World Cup, right? So, Scotland had to do in the last World Cup. They picked a guy who basically never played before, and now West Indies is doing it. It's not exactly the best preparation for a major tournament, is it?
Yeah, and they left Shimron Het behind because he wanted to change his
Twice.
flight. So that was a good move as well. Yeah, once is okay, but twice is just too much. You can't do that. So, are you going for the Netherlands after today's result as well, or you?
I mean, after
Namibia
today,
now?
I'd go Namibia. Yeah, if you ask me
Namibia
right
and
now.
Sri Lanka. I'd
still go Sri Lanka. The rain is the tricky one with all that. So even if you think you've got an eye on that, because there's rain scheduled for pretty much the next few days in both venues. Now you're in front. You've got the spot, right? Like Namibia is in the perfect position to go through to the next round for the second straight tournament based on that. But they're a good team. There's, they'll struggle when they get to the next round, but in this level of cricket, they're a very good team.
Yeah, but I mean, they've beaten Sri Lanka, who beat India and Pakistan. So that basically means Namibia is better than India and Pakistan.
They're the best team in Asia.
Yeah, at the moment, the African team. And we're going West Indies, Ireland in the other group to make it through.
I'll go West Indies, Scotland.
Qualify. Okay.
Yeah, I'll go West Indies, Scotland in that one.
But
I think that group, I think any of those four teams could qualify. UAE is played better than I thought today. I don't think UAE has any chance of qualifying. Because I think in that other group, if you told me that Zimbabwe qualified, I'd be like, yeah, that's fair. Yeah. It's a really messy group. They say the group of death. That's more the group of what the fuck.
I mean, okay. I guess the weird question is, I know why it happened and how it happened, but like West Indies and Sri Lanka are ranked higher than Afghanistan and Bangladesh in the T20 rankings as of today, right? So I wonder how many times that's happened before, where you have higher ranked teams needing to qualify and lower ranked teams automatically into the Super 12. I just think it's a weird format. So.
Well, we never used to make teams try and qualify at all, so it's all news to us, isn't it?
That's true.
So yeah, I think, look, it's obviously I don't want to say it's random, but it's certainly what's the best way of putting it? It's certainly not the kind of system that we're used to in cricket. But having seen the West Indies play over the last year and a half, and having seen Sri Lanka today, it'd be hard to argue that they should automatically be qualifying for these events, right?
Well, the Asia Cup winners should be going through, I would say. They played a decent game there, but then that
was too long.
Flat today.
Yeah, but that was too long back. That would have had to have been played like 6 months ago. Then, if you wanted to be able to do that, but even if you look at that tournament, they're only, I think since the last World Cup, Sri Lanka have been a 50-50 team. I'm not sure if that means you should automatically qualify for a world event. I'm not sure anyone other than the host should qualify, and the reigning champion perhaps. But in cricket, it's a gentlemanly sport. So once you get membership, you never lose it. And just because you've got test membership, because people like traveling to South Africa in the 1800s, apparently that means you get to go to every World Cup. And suddenly we've come up with a scheme where it doesn't do that anymore. And look at how much things are changing. I actually think these are good things for Sri Lanka and West Indies cricket going ahead, even if Sri Lankan fans may not be thinking that today.
Yeah, I do feel for Daniel Alexander today. He must be pretty sad. But let's talk about the Big 8, Super 8. I guess the guys that have already qualified as well, right? So I've got the groups in front of me. Group 1, England, New Zealand, Australia, and Afghanistan. So let's start off with England, right? They were semi-finalists last time around. They were famously runners-up in 2016. Carlos Brathwaite put them out. Winners of the 2019 World Cup after tying that ODI final against New Zealand. Jarrod, strengths, weaknesses, recent form, England?
Yeah, I mean, reason for them with a lot of these teams is that they don't play a lot of T20 cricket, so you're not sure. Or they don't play their best teams, I should say. So that they just, of recent times, I don't know the last time we saw a full strength England team play more than a couple of games in a row. If you go back to that last World Cup, I still would think that they were the best team in that World Cup up until they lost the semi-final, which I thought was, if they had anywhere near their full strength team, what were they, 5 players down by the end of that tournament? They start this tournament with 2 players down as well. I think with England, they have the ability to score 25 to 30 runs more than anyone else can. And because of that, if that clicks, then they're going to be very hard to beat all tournament through. But there's always going to be the problem of how do they defend. So if they have 2 or 3 subpar batting games and they're at the wrong time of the tournament, they're going to be a lot more vulnerable than they should be. But they're, they know what they're doing. They've planned a long way out, but I don't know if any team can really overcome Bairstow and Archer not playing. Maybe they can do Bairstow, but they certainly don't have a replacement for Archer. I don't even think they really know what their top bowling lineup is coming into this tournament. And that's not the case. If you look at them, 2019 World Cup, 2017 Champions Trophy, 2016 World Cup, last World Cup, they knew what their best teams were. They may not have been the best team all the time, but they knew what it was. This one, I think they're coming in going, maybe this will work.
Okay, so it sounds like their batting's their strength and their weakness as well. Ashwin, X Factor, who are you going with? Is it Joss or is it Moeen or someone else?
Yeah, this might be controversial, and I think Jarrod said it right about Bairstow missing and being hard to replace. I actually think from just that one innings he played in Australia 2 or 3 matches ago, I think for me, England's X factor is Alex Hales. I think at the top of the order, I think he slots in, and I think at the top of the order, if he can go really big, really fast, I think it just changes the momentum. And to be honest, that's sort of what Bairstow did for them in the team. So for me, I've my eye out a little bit on Mark Wood, but Jarrod, to your point, I don't know if he's going to start at least in the first game. I don't know if he's part of their best lineup, but I think for me it's Alex Hales.
Yeah, I mean, Hales is a proper person to come in. There aren't many teams in world cricket that could lose a player like Bairstow and replace them properly, and I think that's one thing England can do. The only flip side of that is it would be better if they had Hales and Bairstow, right? If they had picked Hales in the first place, and you could fit both of them in, and they haven't. They're purposely not gone down that way. So I think that is a bit of a problem from that perspective. But there's no doubt that they are that they can replace that thing. And the Mark Wood thing's really, I think, fair as well. They don't know what Mark Wood's going to do. I feel like by this stage, they would have wanted to know exactly what Mark Wood could do and be trusting in it, and they still don't. And we haven't seen him enough in the IPL. We haven't seen him enough in the 100, all these different competitions. He just needs probably reps to know what that role is, and he hasn't played it enough.
Can I quickly ask before I go to Varun on prediction? We've got a question in from Obama Chan Studios, and it relates to 2 of the players. One of them of which is Ben Stokes. Now, we saw him pull off an incredible catch. I mean, he's just a magnificent cricketer. He took an incredible catch on the boundary. How does he fit into this team? Where does he? Is he a T20? Is he as good in T20s as he is in Test matches or ODIs, or have they got better options?
I think if he played T20 all the time, and he played, let's say, 4 or 5 seasons of the IPL or PSL or the Blast in a row, the competitions with a lot of games, I think he'd be one of the best T20 players in the world. But where does he fit into this team? We saw it with Rajasthan. Rajasthan didn't even know where to put him, right? And they paid him an absolute fortune. England's been in the same situation. His bowling isn't good enough in T20 cricket. And the one time England tried to rely on it, Carlos Brathwaite got in the way. And it hasn't got much better since then. His batting, I'm not sure what his best position is, because weirdly enough, you would think that you just bat him at 5 or 6 and just let him go nuts. That's never been the case. And he probably needs to bat top 2, maybe top 3. And they've got other guys who are starring up there. So why would they want to put a guy who hasn't proved himself? And even when he did it for Rajasthan, he was great, but I don't know if he was better than any of the other England alternatives. So he doesn't particularly fit well into that team. On basic talent, though, there's a reason why he's still there, right? They still think that he's, they're not idiots. He is that level of talent, but he just hasn't been able to come up with it consistently. And I just feel like he doesn't quite know what kind of T20 player he wants to be. I would have thought under the McCullum reign, I know McCullum's not the white ball coach, but under the McCullum reign, that would be easier. Just be like, mate, just go out there and smash it. Like, stop thinking. You don't need to think anymore. Try and hit a 6 every ball and see what happens. But I'm not sure he'll ever work out the bowling. I've got a feeling that his best bowling in white ball cricket is with the new ball. And almost no one ever gives him the new ball because he's not accurate enough. So you can't trust him when he's good.
Others who can do it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. It's not that he's bad at any of these things. They've just got better options almost in every position. Yeah. And the other place he should be good is banging the ball in the middle of the wicket in those middle overs. He's not good at that, and Mark Wood be better anyway. So I don't know how he fits in.
That's going to be interesting. Varun, sorry, there's a lot of us on this show that like talking a lot. So welcome to the show. And can I just ask you quickly?
I didn't even know he was here. I thought he was a producer.
It's like midnight my time, so I'm excused.
So he's just about to fall asleep. But Varun, what's your prediction? Are these guys going to make it through to the next round? Are they going to win the whole thing? Where does England sit?
Yeah, so I think England will probably be number 4 in my prediction, and because I think in long tournaments bowling probably comes into play a lot more. Now, having said that, Josh Butler goes crazy in the semi-final, and I'll kind of be proven wrong. But I think England has a good enough team to make it to the semis, but I don't think they'll make it to the final.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, generally, bowling teams do better in tournaments than batting teams. He's completely right. Having said that, England won the 2019 World Cup and have made a semi-final and a final, 2 semi-finals and a final as well. But as a general rule, you're better off to be a good bowling team when you come to a major tournament than you are a good batting team.
So
this
yeah,
is why
I don't say much, but when I do, it's always right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can get to bed now. You're done.
Yeah, he's got all this. He's got all the stats as well to back that claim up, because Varun's definitely into his stats. But that's why it's so great to have Jarrod on, because we just chat shit most of the time. That's like just stuff that we make up with stuff that we think is right. But Jarrod's actually done the research, and he'll actually tell you that it's right, or in most cases wrong. But anyway, the Kiwis, perennial overachievers, strengths, weaknesses, recent form.
See, I think they fall into what we were just talking about, which is we underrate them because we look for batters who are averaging 45, 50 with huge strike rates, and they very rarely come into any tournaments with any of those players. But when was the last time they came in with a weak bowling lineup? And that's why they perennially, well, we call it overachieving. They're probably achieving. I think what New Zealand have is a very good tournament teams. They have good flexibility throughout their squad. They usually end up with really exciting players on the bench they never even get to. Guys like, these guys, it'd be Finn Allen and Glenn Phillips, although they'll start to move some of those players into the 11. So I think they're always good. It does look like a very, very old and experienced lineup, but maybe missing a couple of players that are important. And, Williamson's elbow's gone and Ross Taylor's completely gone. So it's not quite we can make 150 every game because we've got the 2 old fellas flying in the middle overs, right? So that's my biggest concern. That would be my biggest weakness. But bowling, I think we know that you can have a look from the IPL auctions and from the rest of the last couple of World Cups that there's plenty of bowling talent there that they can find and throw into these tournaments.
Ash, your X factor for the Kiwis, who are you looking at?
Sorry, it took me a second to get off mute. I think it's it's a weird one. I think the X factor for the positives, I think it's sort of as Jarrod said, I think it's their quick bowlers, right? They have the experience. I don't know how long Bolt and Saudi have been playing for. I was double checking the squads to make sure they're both in there. But you got Bolt, Saudi, and Milne, and it feels like they've all been around for quite a while. So big fan of the quick bowling. I think the X factor, weirdly, is going to be Kane Williamson to see how he shows up, right? Like, I think we've gone on this weird journey from Big Four to getting into the Sunrisers Hyderabad and left on the bench. And every time he played, he made a 50 to probably the worst form of his life. And so I think how he shows up to the World Cup is going to be what matters.
Yeah, he got 80 odd in the final last year, so showed up on the big stage. Varun, you've already used up one of your semi-final spots from this group. So the others are Australia and Afghanistan. So where did the Kiwis end up in this tournament?
Yeah, so Kiwis, I think, have made 4 finals. I can't remember if they made the 2017 Champions Trophy, but in World Cups and World Test Championships, they have made 4 finals in a row. And
have you
won
literally
red.
forgotten the 2017 Champions Trophy? Have you just blanked that from your head? Like,
Yeah, I
it's
can't
gone from
remember
your
the
brain.
final.
There's
I can't
Pakistan.
remember.
Yeah, you don't know what happened, who won it, right? Like,
No, I know Pakistan won it, but I think it was India-Pakistan final. I don't know. I was there for the
may have
first
been,
half.
I don't know, 15 for 3 or something. I don't know.
Pakistan beat Bermuda in the final, if I remember correctly.
Left arm stuff.
So, now I'm only thinking about 15 for 3. I forgot which team we're talking about. New Zealand. Okay.
New Zealand.
So I think New Zealand is going to come in at 5th. I think they're going to get kicked out on net run rate. And I think my view on that is because I look down the batting order and I can't see anyone who's been in form of late. And so that is my prediction for New Zealand.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions in. Jarrod, why don't we take this quickly? Guptill or Finn Allen?
I like Finn Allen. I think I would have played Finn Allen in the last tournament, which would have made more sense because I know they made the final last time, but I almost feel like the last tournament should have been a preparation for this one, and they should have started to move on from people like Guptill. So I prefer that. But the thing with Guptill is he might play 2 big innings, but it might be the 2 big innings that gets them either in the finals or in the final, right? So, but I think Finn Allen is the better option at the moment.
And I mean, India treated the last one as a preparation for this one anyway. So I think we're totally with you on that one. Australia, defending champions in the warm-up World Cup last year. Hosts of the World Cup this year. The third team in Group 1. Australia any good at T20 cricket, or did they just get lucky with tosses last time?
They certainly got lucky last time. They had no idea what they were doing, let's be honest. Mitch Marsh ended up batting first drop by accident. Marcus Stoinis only batted in the middle order because he'd been doing well for Delhi. Matthew Wade, they just had to fit a wicket keeper in somewhere. Like, it was completely random that they all did so well. Not to mention that the best white ball bowler in the world for a generation had probably his worst game ever, and they still won. And if you want to go show it how random it is, Marcus Stoinis should have been caught at deep mid wicket, got the ball about 3 inches above someone at deep mid wicket's head against Pakistan, and Australia might have lost that game by 60 runs. Even Josh Hazlewood, who arguably is the most informed white ball bowler in the world at the moment, Australia spent years telling him he wasn't any good at white ball cricket and actively dissuading him from playing. So there was a lot of luck in that. Having said that, listen to the names of the players I'm talking about. We're not talking about terrible players. There's a lot of talent there. Weirdly enough, the most talked about T20 player in Australia at the moment might be Cameron Green, who's not in the squad.
He's not in the
squad. If you take Aaron Finch out and you put Cameron Green in, it probably looks like a much better team straight away. But I do like some of the players, around that. I wonder they took a big chance last time that their 5th bowler would be made up of Mitch Marsh, Glenn Maxwell, Marcus Stoinis, whether they get away with that twice. And maybe that is a thing that's slightly easier to get away with in a low-scoring tournament like the UAE was. Whether you get away with that in Australia, I don't know. But look, there's still a lot of talent there. I think their biggest problem would be if Finch and Smith are both, opening and batting at 3, when they just don't need to do that. They have better options available to them. And I know they're handcuffed to one because he's the captain. And I probably back Finch more because he can hit more sixes, but they have to kind of just say, we're playing one of these guys and not both. And we're going to, back the younger players to come through. And I think that they're favourites, but I think they're favourites largely because England don't have Jofra Archer and Bairstow, and because India have their Ravi Jadeja and Bumrah out. I think otherwise all 3 of those teams would be pretty much the same.
So wow, so Steve Smith and Aaron Finch are kind of the similar to the KL Rahul, Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli problem that we've been discussing on the show for years and years. Too many anchors and too few people that can hit big shots.
Yeah, well, I think in Finch's case, he's not an anchor, but he's not even an anchor. He's just turned into someone who doesn't make runs, right? So it's kind of that's more the Virat problem than the traditional anchor problem. I think Steve Smith, if you go back to that period around 2016, he could play, right? In fact, really interesting. If you go back, him, Root, and Kohli all were really good T20 players at that point. They don't continue to be those kinds of players. And I think Smith really does struggle with the idea of his wicket doesn't mean anything anymore, because that's not how he thinks as a human being or as a robot, really, does he? So if Finch was in form and they wanted to use Smith as a floating anchor, I'd be okay with that. But if Finch isn't in form, I really worry about that combination. And Finch is just retired from one-day cricket. Feels like he feels like he's put in his notice, but he's still returning emails. And that's the most dangerous. But you're all office workers. That's the most dangerous time for anyone.
Yeah, awesome. Ashwin, X factor, is it Josh Hazelwood after MS Dhoni's trained him to be a good white ball bowler?
All right, Jarrod, we have a running counter on Edges and Sledges on how many minutes in an episode till DJ gets to bring up MS Dhoni. So 25 minutes is pretty good, honestly, especially in the 3 to 4 minute.
In the Australia category as well. That
did well.
It's only because India's in the other group, so you had to find a reason. It's interesting. I look at the squad and I look at it and I say, I think since the hodgepodge of the last World Cup, I actually think what Jarrod mentioned could be a wild card is their strength, which is Stoinis, Marsh, and Maxwell. As those 3 middle, you can kind of flex and send any of them in at any point from a batting order standpoint based on how many overs are left when the wicket falls. You can, Maxwell has shown his ability to take wickets. At least give him 1 or 2 overs here or there. I think it's really interesting that not a lot of teams have 3 guys who can bowl two overs and all walk into the side for their batting prowess. And I think that's the advantage that Australia has built with the 3 of them. Now, it could absolutely backfire and fall apart on a day when the other team's batting well. There's some, I saw yesterday, there's some very lopsided looking grounds where some teams will target short boundaries. So that's going to be an interesting one. And so, yeah, I think it could backfire. But to me, that's having 3 out and out all-rounders who walk into the 11 is something pretty much no other side has.
Do you know what would be better if they had Cameron Green? Because then they would have someone that they know can bowl on bad days. The problem with the other 3 is Mitchell Marsh basically doesn't bowl anymore. Yeah. Maxi can bowl about 2, and Stoinis can bowl about 3 bounces before people just start whacking him for 6. So, but you're right. I mean, that's what they made that decision. They basically panicked coming into the last World Cup, and that's why Mitch Marsh came back, was so that they had a 3rd all-rounder. So if everything went to shit, you just throw him the ball.
Yeah, absolutely.
It filled the Marsh quota, and I didn't hear anything after Ashwin said Marcus Stoinis and flex, because I was just imagining flexing after that. Yeah. Anyway, Varun, you've still got one spot to go. So you going for Australia to make it into the semi-finals?
Yeah, for sure. Finals, Australia finals.
Are they winning it? Australia final. Okay.
Yeah, Australia finals. 2 reasons. 1, at home, and 2, I can't see any weakness in that team except for Finch. So that makes it it makes it the top 2 teams for me. So yeah, that's my prediction. And so from this group, you're going to have England and Australia go through the semis.
But is that finals
on the same points?
It's finals, but not winning the finals?
I can't. We'll have to save something for the next episode, right?
All right.
Yeah. Or the second half of the show, depending on how it goes. Anyway, let's move on. Team 4 in this Afghanistan, right? Like I think probably a lot of people's second teams, maybe not Pakistan fans, but I'd say Afghanistan's probably quite close to Indian fans, and we quite like them as a team. And people like Rashida have got massive fan followings in India because they play the IPL. Jarrod, strengths, weaknesses, recent form. We haven't really seen them play after the Asia Cup, so do we know what they're up to?
I don't think they did. Didn't they go on a pause and then they've got 2 warm-ups? So I don't think after the Asian Cup we've seen much of them at all. Look, I mean, their biggest problem is it's the same in one-day cricket and Test cricket as it is in T20. Is they still haven't got bang-on batters who can get regular runs. There's no problems with scoring boundaries. They can score runs against people bowling 90 miles an hour. They're fine against spin. But it does, it goes back to the piece I wrote about 8 years ago on them, which is that they're a team of number 8s, right? And that's a strength. But maybe you probably rather be a team of number 7s, right? Rather than a team of number 8s when you think about it that way. And I know that some of the players are coming through, but I think that at that level, also, I wonder if it's not ideal for them not to play in the warm-up tournament. I know, obviously, it's great that they're in the main part of the tournament, but for them to play in, just get some of the cobwebs out, get some confidence up, and then hit the next part of the tournament running might be a better thing for them. But obviously, they've got Rashid Khan, and he's a next level talent, and he's not going away, is he? But I do worry about that. I worry about that. I think this tournament's going to be a 160 par tournament. Right, it's not as high scoring as some of the other T20 venues in the world, and I wonder how consistently they could score 160 to put pressure on other teams in what is quite a stacked group, right? And I think Varun's got a point that New Zealand maybe don't quite make it because of net run rate, but New Zealand are still there and thereabouts, right? So you've got 3 pretty good teams. If England get firing, they made a mess of Rashid Khan in the 2019 World Cup. They don't have as much fear of him as some of the other teams do. So I from that perspective, I just think it's hard for Afghanistan. I think if they were running through the group, although having seen what happened with Namibia and Sri Lanka, maybe they're happy not to be doing that. But if they ran through the first group, they might hit that second group with a bit more momentum. But I find it hard to believe they're going to make 160 consistently enough to put other teams under pressure, which is kind of what happened in that last World Cup. I thought they played some really good cricket at some times. I thought they should have beaten Pakistan. And they were a good team, but they just don't have the ability to put teams under pressure in every single game. They sort of fly hot and cold, and that's because they don't have a nailed-on batting lineup.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting you say 160 is going to be par. How much is the toss? How much are conditions? How much are the sizes of grounds going to affect this World Cup? Because conditions did there was a massive effect on the last World Cup, to be honest. I think even Aaron Finch admitted that after winning the World Cup, which was great of him, but it made for pretty dull viewing by the end of it, that if you knew you won the toss, you were going to win the tournament or win the game. So is this going to be a more even contest between bat and ball with the grounds and the pitches and the conditions? And is batting first going to make a big difference as opposed to batting second, or how is that going to play out? Because you're, I suppose, a local almost, being Australian.
I've once a local, yeah. I've been to Gidinea Park, so I'm probably the only one on this podcast who has. Of course, I was watching the football and it was raining that day. But it's I think the biggest thing is that the last tournament was they just used the same grounds over and over again, right? So straight away here, it's the diversity. So, I worked for the Melbourne Stars in the Big Bash. Basically, what you want to do at the MCG is you play for twos, because you could score 2 runs a ball at the MCG without taking any risk at all. And once you start scoring a 2 almost every ball, that's when they start bowling bad balls, and that's when Glenn Maxwell and Marcus Stoinis cash in, and that players like that are going to be able to do that. That's not how most T20 cricket in the world is played, and it's not the only ground that's going to be like that. Then we've got Gidinea Park at the moment and Adelaide Oval. They're both really similar, really long straight hits, but really short square of the wicket. So the actual grounds are much more varied. So it's not like you can go in with a set plan or two. So it's the best thing. Well, I wouldn't say the best thing, but the easiest way to win in franchise cricket is basically to rig your home pitch, right? So you select 83 spinners and then you make it spin. This is not a Chennai joke, but obviously, fill in the blanks where you need to. But we've seen that right around the world. Guyana do it, right, as well. And you see other teams do the same thing. If it's a pitch with extra bounce, they suddenly hire all the bowlers who are over 6'5", right? This is a tournament that doesn't really allow you to do that. You need to be quite variable. So it's probably a tournament that should be won by the best squad, not just the best 11. So I think you're right. I don't think winning the toss is going to have the same impact. And I don't think having one plan will also have as much impact as it did in UAE.
Excellent. That's going to be interesting. Makes for a more balanced viewing experience, I suppose. Ash, X factor for Afghanistan, or are they all just X factors?
Yeah, I mean, the easy one to say would have been Rashid Khan, obviously, but Jarrod
Yeah.
was right. Hey, everybody knows about him, so I'm going to go a different direction. I'll be honest, I don't watch a lot of CPL, but one name that has done well is a couple of 50s and hits the ball pretty big is the opener and wicketkeeper Ramanullah Gurbaz, right? He did pretty well in the Asia Cup. Not great. I think the challenge of the Asia Cup is Afghanistan had two amazing matches, right? Sri Lanka beat them with 4 or 5 balls left. Pakistan obviously beat them on the last ball. And then they got absolutely decimated by India. So from a recency bias standpoint, we think about that. But they had a pretty solid Asia Cup. They lost the toss both times and had to bat first, which didn't work in their favor. And so anyway, I think they did all right in the Asia Cup. I think if they can get a good start from Gurbaz, who's the keeper and opener, I think then it makes them competitive. If not, I don't quite think they have the batting depth to put up the 160s, sort of like Jarrod said.
Amazing. Varun, if you're still awake, why aren't they making it through for you?
It's a group of what the hell, right? This is that group now. So it's
That's the polite
it's too,
version.
yeah, it's too hard, man. It's Australia, New Zealand, England. It's just too tough. So they're not going to make it below number 5 for me. And but the only call out is I just love watching them play. And I think between Mujib and Rashid and big grounds, it could be a lot of fun. So yeah, I think those games everyone will tune in for it.
Absolutely passionate fans. I mean, sometimes it spills over a little bit too much, possibly, but it's almost good in a way to see that passion come out. We've been to an India-Afghanistan game that took place in Southampton, and it was one of the best games of cricket I've watched. It was. It went to the last over. I think Shami took a hat trick to finish it off, and it was close, right? So, I guess T20 cricket, today's result is totally anything can happen. Sri Lanka have lost in a million, and Afghanistan are more than capable of pulling out a surprise or two. So let's see how that goes. I think that's the first group done. So we're going to take a break now. Guys, like and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching this on YouTube. That's it. I've got to do the action. Like and subscribe. And if you're listening to this on a podcast platform, give us 5 stars and leave us a review. That said, we will be back straight after this break. This is the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast on the 99.94 DM network. Don't go anywhere. We'll see you after the break. Welcome back from that break, and you're still listening to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast, and we're in conversation with Jarrod Kimber. We are previewing the Super 12 stage of the T20 World Cup, and we're talking about the 8 teams that we know will be in there. We've talked through the first group, and this is where all the India fans tune in, because this is the group in which India are, but we're not going to talk about them now. We're going to first talk about Bangladesh. So India fans will have to wait a little bit longer. Jarrod, Bangladesh, strengths, weaknesses, recent form.
Well, strengths, certainly not their batting. I mean, their batting's almost comically bad. It's funny. It was a while back. I think it must have been the last tournament. I had a look expecting to see that their batters are actually really good, but the BPL is just low scoring. And then you have a look at the BPL and all the highest scorers are from overseas, like fastest scorers. And you do realize that they just haven't found a way to produce quality batters. I had Mohammed Isam on my podcast once, and we went through it. A lot of it's to do with the pitches. A lot of it's to do with mindset. They're a very traditional thinking cricket culture.
Isn't Tamim Iqbal? Wasn't he the highest run scorer in 2016 in the World Cup?
In 2016,
I think I read that.
That's 6 years ago, man.
Dude.
But still, he's got a guy. I mean, is he still playing? Is he in the squad this time?
No, I think he is, not. Isn't he? Well, no, he was playing recently. He's still playing for Bangladesh.
But they can still produce players, I think is my point. They've produced players who can score quickly.
Talent isn't their problem, right? Okay. Their players consistently scoring lots of T20 runs fast over a long period of time has been the problem. So their bowlers really do bring them back into it more often than not. Obviously, they were also lucky for a long period of time to have Shakib when Shakib was peak Shakib, before the ban. They had Mustafizur for a while as well. They've actually had quite a few good finger spinners sort of come through, and probably some underrated seam bowlers at times. But yeah, batting. I wonder. I thought UAE was perfectly suited to them, or UAE and Oman, because it was going to be a low-scoring World Cup, and that's what they were used to, and they were dog shit. So I'm finding it hard to suddenly think they're going to be a lot better when we know the runs per over are going to go up minimum 1 run and over in this tournament from the last one, probably even more than that. I just don't think they have the batting to do that. And I like their bowling, but I can't see how their bowling is going to be suited to these kinds of conditions. But no, they're not. Have they ever been a consistently good T20 team? They've had little flashes at the Asia Cup occasionally, but I don't think they've ever been a team where anyone's particularly worried about. But I would say Afghanistan's had more hype, as a T20 team than Bangladesh has had, and that says a lot considering where the two of them have come from.
Yeah, it's interesting that some of our favorite moments recently have come against Bangladesh, including the premature celebration by Mushfiqur in that Bangalore game.
That was one of their highlights, isn't it?
That was one of the greatest moments, I have to say. The Hardik Pandya 3-wicket over to lose that game from that position. I'm actually going to be watching the India-Bangladesh game. I think it's in Adelaide. So I suspect it'll be quite a hotly contested. Varun, I know you've got some strong views about the rivalry. So what is it with the India-Bangladesh rivalry?
Yeah,
Do you remember
I don't know
the head, the picture of the head that someone like photoshopped of someone carrying Dhoni's head?
Yeah, do you remember the haircut one as well, where Mustafa said they did a poster, wasn't it, or in the newspaper or something, of him cutting all the Indians' hair with his cutters. I like that.
Yeah. The rivalry, I don't know where it's come from. It's obviously not as important to us as it is to them. I always give the analogy of you always have this cousin in the family who's worried about how much you got in your exams, but you are focused on what the rest of the world is doing. So that's how I see Bangladesh.
Well, Bangladesh is interesting. I don't know if you guys know, but because obviously they have the Pakistan relationship, which is obvious, right? But they also have a real relationship. They hate Afghanistan fans. Right. And so they've built 3 fairly good rivalries before they've even become a major, test nation. Right. They're still struggling to become one of the, top 6, top 8 teams. And yet their fans are out there playing well above their game. Right. How many major rivalries do New Zealand have? Pathetic.
Yeah. I've worked in Bangladesh and they've got pretty good marketeers there. So I think that's a pretty good. That's pretty good. You had to create rivalry. You need money. You need viewers, right? So that's why I say suddenly there's we don't even know where this rivalry came from. Why is Dhoni's head in somebody's hand? What? When we saw that picture, we were just shocked.
No, we used to write a blog then, and I put the picture up as this is a joke, and then our blog had a strike from Google or something for putting up violent pictures. It was just quite amusing. Ash, has Bangladesh got an X factor? Should we be?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I struggled with this one a little. Most teams I went through, I was like, all right, there's 2 or 3. Which one do I pick? Here, I was like, all right, I can't really find one. I honestly think on a big ground on quick wickets, it's going to be Mustafizur, right?
Yeah,
he's in the only. He can win them games, and if he doesn't show up, I don't see anybody else really. I mean, Shakib bowls a little. Mossadegh bowls a little, Mehdi Hassan bowls. Honestly,
Shakib used to be great for years in IPL fantasy and stuff because he's bat 5, bowl 4 overs, take 2 wickets.
Yeah, I think he hasn't quite been reliable. I mean, they had my frame of reference is the Asia Cup. They didn't even make it to the second round, whatever it was called. But if Fizz shows up, they might win a game or 2. If not, I think that's it.
They have a rivalry against Sri Lanka as well. The Nagin dance. I've forgotten about
pretty
that.
bad, actually. Yeah.
See what I'm saying? They're all over the place.
It's good
awesome.
marketing.
So
it's worse than making the finals. Do you remember, what was when they made the quarterfinals of the 2015 World Cup? There was
the no ball,
waist high no ball, and was there also someone catching something on the rope or something in one of the earlier games? They were just all over. The other team everyone always sleeps on for rivalries is. Watch the Zimbabwe fans when something slightly controversial goes on. Zimbabwe fans are they go studs up all the time, and there's just not enough of them for it to make a dent on Twitter. But Zimbabwe fans, don't sleep on them. If something happens in this tournament, they will absolutely destroy their opposition. Remember, the newspaper ran an article saying that John Mooney cheated because he was a former alcoholic in the 2015 World Cup. They've got some game over there as far as nuts behavior goes.
And Dinesh Karthik, I think, took them out in Nidas as well. I think that was the final where Karthik hit the 29 of 8. That was probably Bangladesh as well, or was it Sri Lanka? I can't remember. Anyway, Varun, what is your prediction for them? Where are they going to end in this group of 4?
Well, they're not going to end very well, but the big
Oh,
brands
actually,
in
of
Bangladesh
6. There'll be 6 teams. We must remember there'll be 2 people from the qualifiers that will come in as well.
So that's what I was going to say. That if Sri Lanka is in this group, you can all the brands in Bangladesh will be laughing their way to the bank, right? Like, you've got the biggest rivalries possible in one group, 3 guaranteed matches. I think the Bangladesh Cricket Board is going to be the winner in this.
I mean, it's basically all the Asian teams plus Namibia maybe would be Group B, right? So it'll be like a repeat of the Asia Cup. So
it's really only Afghanistan that isn't in that group, isn't it?
Yeah. Maybe we can swap Namibia for Afghanistan. Maybe that can happen later on, but it doesn't sound like these guys are making it through. The next team on my list is South Africa. Jarrod, we've just seen them in India. They did pretty well last time around, 5 out of 6. Narrowly missing, I think, on net run rate qualifying, and I think Australia just beat them on net run rate to qualify in the last World Cup. Strengths, weaknesses, recent form. I mean, the thing with form in T20 cricket is it's so fickle, right? Like, you can see Kohli score 100 one day and then he gets a duck the next day. And you're like, oh, he's not in good form again. It's just, I don't think form is the right thing, but strengths and weaknesses probably worth.
Yeah, well, the form's hard anyway because South Africa are probably one of the few teams that actually play a full strength lineup occasionally, but most of the teams don't. Like, you don't even know what the form will be because you're not sure what team has been playing for the last little while. So South Africa, very much like Australia, taking a gamble, but they're taking a gamble a step further, and they're taking a gamble with their batting lineup. So what they do is they basically try and have 6 players who can knock the ball around consistently, get themselves to 150, 160, 170, and then back the fact that they've got a very skillful and very varied bowling attack. They've got finger spin, they've got wrist spin, they've now got some left armers, they've got slow ball specialists, they've got genuine pace strike bowlers. And that's essentially what they've been doing for a while. I thought that last World Cup flattered them. I think if you go back and look at the results, they should have lost that game to Sri Lanka. They won the game against England, but it was when England had already qualified and basically was only, half taking it seriously. That said, I think they're actually a better team now than they were in that World Cup. And I think that they've worked out what they're doing. And if you look at a lot of those guys that bat in that top 6, most of them have the ability to hit 35 with a strike rate of 130, 140, right? So not top end, but they can get themselves into the game, and then they hope that they don't lose 5 wickets before their 15th over. And if they don't lose 5 wickets before the 15th over, they should give themselves a chance to put a decent total on the board that they can defend. So they're an interesting team just because their bowling is, I mean, on paper, it's not far away. Maybe they want Janssen to have a little bit more. They want Janssen to be a bit more experienced at T20 cricket in a perfect world, or Wayne Parnell to be, slightly better. But it's almost an ideal lineup on paper when it comes to bowling. And then with batting, they just sort of, they do a very similar thing to what Pakistan do. They try and get average totals and hope that's enough. And that may not be a bad idea in this particular World Cup. I still think that they're about, 10-1 with most bookies, which is a very good bet, but probably a very accurate of where they are compared to the top 3 teams.
Yeah, and I think Temba is probably going to do a little bit better on those grounds where he can run 2s.
The bigger grounds should suit him. Definitely, you're right.
Yeah. Ash, X factor for South Africa.
Yeah, I think Jarrod covered a lot of it. To be honest, I think it's two things, right? One is Rabada, right? I'm not even saying the quicks. I don't think it's Rabada, Nokia, Janssen, everybody. I think it's just Rabada, if he shows up, can be a game changer. And then to me, the interesting X factor is actually Quinton de Kock. He looked, I mean, just again, thinking of the recent series, he didn't look great in the ODIs against India, but looked good in the T20s. And I think if he can, they have enough batsmen with, if you think about kind of Miller and of course Tristan Stubbs, if he gets a game, if Quinton de Kock can play that, maybe anchor is a bad word, but get 50 at the 120, 130 strike rate, it just allows them to unleash with their massive hitters. And so he can help set up the game for South Africa, which then allows Rabada to go defend. So to me, he's going to be really important.
Interesting. Varun, your prediction for South Africa, and how disappointed are you about Brevis not playing?
I was just going
He's
to
not
say,
in the
if they
squad.
had
Baby
Baby
AB.
AB in the team, they were in the top 4 for me. The fact that
You
they
just like
don't have
saying
Baby
Baby
AB,
AB. That's it.
yeah, I love
Baby
saying
AB.
Baby AB. The fact that they don't, I feel like they're missing that trick. Honestly, I don't know how they'll do. I've started really enjoying the South African team in the last few months or last 1 year or so. I feel like they're building towards the future. This is a tough one for me, but I don't think they're going to make it to the semis. But it's like touch and go. So if anyone has to come back and listen to the episode and they do make it, you should give me credit for saying it's just touch and go.
Okay, so it's touch and go, but that only leaves, you haven't put Bangladesh through. The other two teams are Pakistan and India. So let's come to the neighbor first. They've just lost to England 4-3. It's 1-1 after the Asia Cup because Pakistan did make the final, but they didn't win it. So that was okay. Jarrod, without using the phrase predictably unpredictable, tell us about Pakistan.
I think they are predictable at the moment in T20 cricket. They're a top order dependent team. They're a bit like South Africa, whereas I think South Africa's batting is more stretched. So South Africa has 6 players, right, that you can depend on. Pakistan seems to have 2. But those 2 seem to make runs so consistently it doesn't matter as much. Outside of that, it's taken them forever to work out that Shadab Khan should be batting at number 4, which I suppose that is the most predictable thing of Pakistan, of having the talent and never using it correctly. But a bit like we were talking about with South Africa, they could score between 150, 160 fairly regularly, and then they're kind of daring you to do that against their bowlers, right? Slightly different kind of bowling attack to South Africa's, maybe not quite as balanced in some ways as South Africa's, but there's so much talent in that bowling lineup, and you kind of feel that one of the 3 random guys who bowl over 90 miles an hour that they will pick can take a 3-wicket haul at any one stage, which will peg you back. I mean, we saw that in the UAE game. You've got a guy not even bowling 90 miles an hour, starts to reverse swing it, and suddenly UAE go almost defend 111, right? That's how Pakistan have been playing for a while. I thought they were excellent in the last World Cup. I do wonder how they will go outside their top 2 if any team does manage to take wickets against them early on. But I do think they're a really good team. And they're not that far away from the top 3 when you look at the odds. So I think even the bookmakers are saying that there's a lot going on there.
Okay, then. So, Ashwin, pick one X factor from this team.
All right, just the one. And it's interesting because you're starting to see patterns, but I'm not only picking quick bowlers, I'm picking lefty quick bowlers. But to me, it's actually Shaheen's coming back, right?
Yeah.
He missed the 7 matches against England, but now that he's back in the side, he's just unbelievable. So you can tell I come from a Team India vantage point where left arm quick bowlers are who I think will do really well. But yeah, I think it's going to be Shaheen. They must be very excited, even just the morale boost that comes from him back in the side.
But Jarrod's given us hope, because if we can get through Babar and Rizwan, then it's not 152 for no loss. We might bowl them out for 130.
It's a weird tournament because we know that the seam was changed on the Kookaburra about 2 years ago, and all the data says that it's much more, the wickets are happening a lot more in the power play. But the last World Cup was played in the UAE, where that probably wasn't going to be a factor anyway, right? We're already seeing from the 2 games today that the bowlers who were bowling wobble balls were a lot tougher to face. And we know in Australian cricket, that's certainly been the case. So if you are Pakistan and your top order does rely on 2 players, that's not an ideal situation to be going into this World Cup. Having said that, they seem to be going all right, those two, for quite a while now. So maybe it doesn't matter.
Okay. Varun, are you
Yeah, so
predicting Pakistan make it through?
yeah,
Are
so
they
based
runners-up? Are they
on,
winning the whole thing?
I mean, while we haven't factored in Namibia and other teams in this group, I am going to say Pakistan make it through. I was very torn between South Africa and Pakistan who will make it, and Ashwin and Jarrod have laid out all of those reasons. So
But
I
they're
was
so similar,
torn.
right? I think that's what we've heard. They play
Yeah,
games like
exactly.
quite
And I actually
similarly.
think the South African team is more balanced than the Pakistan team, but it's just that, I don't know, it's that X factor. I don't know, the top two plus Shaheen, Naseem. Like, I don't know. There's something about them that you feel that they can break through into the semis. And that's the
Or they
reason.
can
That's the
just
reason.
blow up and end sixth
Yeah,
in the
exactly. So
group
like
as
that's what I'm
well.
saying. I'm protecting myself. It's South Africa will be close, but I think Pakistan will make it.
Okay. And they're going through to the semis, the final, or what are they doing? Because have you put England in
Semi
the final or Australia?
Australia.
You put
So
someone in the final.
yeah, Australia's in the finals,
Oh, okay.
and Pakistan is in the semi-finals.
Okay, we don't even need to come to you at the end.
Why? Namibia versus Australia is the final of the World Cup.
That would be fun,
What
to be fair.
What are you talking about?
That's why I'm going for the group stages only. Anyway, okay, so people have waited for 55 minutes patiently in the comments while we
And
strung
let's end
them
the
along.
podcast here.
Yeah, that's
Oh.
it. We haven't got anything else to talk about. India. We are an Indian cricket podcast. We love our boys. We've spent the last 6 months after the England Test series, I guess, just talking. Well, it feels like 6 months, less than that. Talking about the top three. Bumrah's gone. We finally got a 15th in Shami. I saw some pictures of him on Instagram saying he's on his flight and stuff. That was quite good. Players are also allowed to play if they've got COVID, by the way. The ICC has confirmed if you're COVID positive, you're allowed to play. Jarrod, strength, weakness, recent form, we probably don't need to get into because we've gone on this podcast enough about India doing well. But what are the strengths and the weaknesses of this Indian 15?
It's going to sound weird when I say the strength is batting, because that's kind of what everyone moans about the most. But it's hard to look at the bowling without Bumrah and say that's the strength, right? I actually think the strength...
the strength is by default because the bowling is so bad that the batting is the strength.
Yeah, kind of. I think the strength should be, and this is slightly put off by the fact that Hardik Pandya started batting like a human last year, and Jadeja's not playing. But I do think the strength could be an incredible... You could have an almost England-like setup where you have you bat to like number 9 or 10 and have all these different bowling options available to you. It's not really... West Indies and England are probably the only two teams who've ever done that successfully, and they both made the final of the 2016 World Cup being able to do that. If you can do that, that would be great. The problem is we don't really know. I think Hardik's bowling is okay, but we don't know if he's going to... He needs to be able to bat like old Hardik, not nudging around the corner for once, in order for that to work. And also with Jadeja not there, it's not quite as pretty, I think, as it should be. But I do love that. I love that strength of the flexibility, and I think that once they can nail that down, that should be something that is good for them for a long time going ahead. That should be the strength. But I think realistically, the strength in this tournament is that they should be able to make 160 in every one of those games, and put a lot of pressure on everyone else. I worry about what happens once we get to the death, but it won't matter because Bhuvi will take 7 for in the power play every time, and it's game over.
Yeah, and we'll need each one of those 160 with once we get to the 19th over. But Jarrod, we've got a question about Sky. Suryakumar Yadav, he's been on an absolute roll. He hasn't really played much in Australia. I don't think he's played at all in Australia, actually. Do you think he's going to be successful in Australia? And where do you rate him currently? That comes in from SS98.
I think he's a fantastic player. I think there seems to be a problem. India's got a very similar problem to what Australia had in the late 90s, early 2000s, where you almost have to come in and average 50 straight away for everyone not to go, oh, he's no good. We'll just try, we'll try the next guy. right? And I think there's a bit of that there. I think that he's one of the cleanest strikers I've seen. He also seems impossible to turn him into an anchor. And like my heart's still broken from Rishabh Pant becoming an anchor before Hardik did it as well. I just don't understand this fascination with we've got these guys that everyone in the world would want. Let's make them more shit. But apparently that seems to be the way that people are going with that at the moment. But I think he's a player that's much harder to get to play in that style. I wonder if we will see in Australia specifically more short stuff with 2 men out on the leg side, maybe angling it into him, maybe left arm is even bowling around the wicket to him, because he hits a lot of balls in the air in those areas, but those are usually on slower pitches, right? What happens when you get him on the very fast pitches? It may just be he clears the boundary and it's not a problem at all. But I do think if I haven't done proper analysis into him, but I think if I was doing proper analysis for a team, first up against him, I would be trying that. But I rate him really highly. I think he's a fantastic talent, and I can't wait for him to become an anchor.
Has he played in Australia before?
I don't think he has.
Yeah, the fact that none of us can remember is not a great sign. But yeah,
I'm going to say no, but yeah. I mean, in any cricket, he might have. He might have, toured with a random side. But I
mean, like
don't remember
T20 cricket. Yeah,
I don't think so. No.
No. Jarrod, another controversial question. Rajat Agnihotri asked Virat and Rohit to play their last T20 international on the 13th of November, which is obviously finals day. Against Australia, by the sounds of it, Varun.
Yeah, November 13th is going to be a game where Virat and Rohit play. Is it the last game? I don't know. That we'll ask Jarrod. But
okay.
Does that mean that's the last game they play together? Because if it's the last game they play together, I don't think it's going to be on the 13th of November, even if they make the final. I think there's a very
their last
chance.
T20 game. Their last T20 game, international together.
I think it's very. I wouldn't be putting. India are the current favourites on the bookmakers as of a couple of days ago. When England weirdly enough, when England beat Australia, India went to favourites, not England. And before, I think India were about third favorite. So clearly, there's a lot of money that's coming in India very recently, right across the spectrum. I find it hard to sit here and say that India is bang on to win it. But having said that, I think I'd much rather be on their side of the draw. It seems like they could have a bad start like they did last time, and it won't affect them in the same way, I would think. But who knows? You could have a shooting star team, and rain could play a part, and all those sorts of things. But they look better than before. But I certainly wouldn't be putting any money on both of those players playing in the final on the 13th of November for India.
Ooh, interesting. Ashwin, X factor for the Indian cricket team, and why is it a run out at the bowler's end of Joss Butler in the semi-final?
Yeah, that's definitely what I was going to say. Everybody's probably expecting me to say Sky or Hardik. Varun and DJ will probably hate me for this. I think our X factor this tournament is going to be KL Rahul. 4 half centuries in the last 6 times he's batted. If you include the warm up against Western Australia, 5 half centuries out of the last 7 times he's batted. I just think his press conference recently, he said we are going to be aggressive, even if it means being risky. I think he's finally trying to undo the wounds of strike rate doesn't matter type of stuff. And
strike rate is
I think
overrated. Yeah.
Strike rate is overrated. Yeah. So I think he's going to come out swinging, and I think he could be the difference. He's batting for his place in the side in the continued post Rohit Virat world, and I think he's going to come out swinging. So to me, our X factor is going to be KL Rahul.
Just on Suri Kumar before as well, he has played 217 T20s in Asia, 4 in the West Indies, 5 in England, and 2 in Ireland.
So we were right. We fluked it, but it was right.
Yeah, but that does tell you that I think going ahead, I just wonder how often teams will allow players to develop like that. Like it's the same with Shreyas Iyer. I know it's a different format and everything, but you look at Shreyas Iyer sometimes and you're just like, how do we expect him to be good if he's never gone anywhere, right? Like these guys have to play in these other areas to learn how to do it. Damien Martin didn't learn how to play spin by growing up at the Wacker. He learned how to play spin by failing in Asia and working it out. So I do think from that perspective, yeah. But the KL Rahul thing, just to get back on that, yeah, it's incredible. All these guys are trying to unanchor themselves after literally. I mean, I wonder with him, it was almost twin pressure with him, wasn't it? It was playing for an IPL franchise where he's the only guy who could hold a bat at times. And it was also, there was no doubt that was Virat's mantra, right? When in the national team at that time. But it is interesting that it does seem to be in Australia and India that it's just like, we've got a really good batter. How do we turn them into someone who's not quite as good in this format that bats quite slightly longer and makes more runs? I mean, Australia's been trying to do it to Glenn Maxwell for a generation. It's just that Maxi doesn't listen.
Yeah, he just wants to come out and smash it.
Yeah.
Jarrod, we've gone over an hour, so thank you so much for your time. We do want to release you, but we've heard Varun's predictions, which are probably a little bit biased. Maybe we should
You
have
haven't
the expert
you haven't heard what my prediction
Okay.
is. My prediction
It was
is
Namibia, right? Namibia.
Yes,
No, it's
Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka
there's
winning
gonna
the
be
T20 World Cup.
a 72nd century. There's going to be a great innings in the debut T20 tournament in Australia for one batsman. You're going to see a swashbuckling left-hander play, and you're probably going to have
left-hander.
Yeah, you're probably going to have
Matthew
India
Wade.
Australia, where 3 runs off the last ball with Dinesh Karthik on strike. I think that's what's going to happen, and I think DK is going to get some magic.
You've gone out on a limb. I don't know
Buy
why
some
you
new-
said that.
Buy
It's
some
a
new
good
shirts.
move.
It's 12:40 my time, so I am ready to sign out.
It's a good move. You make like 6 weird predictions. One is right, and you look like a hero.
That's basically my career.
Like I told you. Yeah, it's great. So Jarrod, who are you putting into the semis, and then who's your winner?
Yeah, probably. I think England, Australia is a good bet. Because New Zealand's in that group, I think it makes it a little bit trickier. I've got no problem with putting India and Pakistan in. I would say that I've got a feeling that it might be South Africa in the semis in that side with one of India and Pakistan, just because I don't trust both of them. I don't trust those 3 teams are not as solid as the 3 teams in the other group, and so it's almost impossible to tell you which team is going to shit the bed. But I do kind of feel like one of them will. Maybe because India did last time. They're the least likely to do that this time. I don't know. But I do think that South Africa is a little bit better than last time. And I wonder if Pakistan is slightly less ready to play a series in Australia than India might be.
Ashwin, your prediction? Similar? Different?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to alienate any fans. So for sure, I have India. I actually have India and South Africa going through. And then
He's got India in the semifinals in both groups, just in case.
That's it.
India
I
A,
have-
India B. Captain by
I think it's
Shreyas
India
Iyer
and South
Shikhar.
Africa. I think it's England and Australia, but I think England makes the final, and then India plays England in the final.
And then Ashwin Mankad or runs
Butler.
Joss out.
That's it.
I can't wait, man. Honestly,
That'll be so good.
Did you see Tabrez Shamsi sent out a warning tweet to all the batters in the World Cup today about the runouts at the bowler's end? So could be a fun tournament going ahead.
I mean, if you've been out twice that way, you've probably got the warning already, haven't you? I don't know. Maybe you take the hint. Also, speaking of runouts at the bowler's end, Deepthi Sharma was the player of the tournament at the Women's Asia Cup, which was a nice little touch because there's been a lot of focus on what she did at Lord's. But I mean, she's a great cricketer. Congratulations to the Indian women that I think took 36 minutes to chase those runs down against Sri Lanka. So they had a bit of an afternoon off, which was incredible. Ashwin, you on the show last week, as I predicted, that would be the case. I didn't say 36 minutes, but I did say that would be a pretty easy win for the Indian women. It was really good to see. It was nice, actually. I saw a little tweet from the Rajasthan Royals where number 7 and number 18 were there at the end. Number 7 being Harman and number 18 being Smriti, being there at the end to win a Asia Cup. And then they had a little picture of Dhoni and Virat as well in one of the Asia Cup wins. So that was a nice little touch from those guys. We got anything else? We've got a fantasy cricket league, Ashwin, and we've got a challenge issued to us as well on the Discord. I don't know whether you've read that.
Yeah, I saw it. We have a fantasy league, as we always do, for Edges and Sledges fans. Check us out on our Discord. We'll tweet the link as well. You have a few days to go. The fantasy league this year on the official site only starts for the Super 12 stage, so they're not covering these first few games, which gives us a couple more days. But get your teams in and set up, and we'll watch our Twitter and our Discord for the link.
Yeah, thank you, Jarrod. It's been an absolute pleasure previewing this with a real expert. And we're looking forward to doing more of these with you now that we're part of the 99.94 network. And guys, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, one tip, one hand. I'll be in Australia next week for the India-Pakistan game this time. So we'll put some fun stuff out on social media. So follow us there. Leave us a review. As I said, like and subscribe if you're watching this. Please do that. Yep, just once. Okay. And we will see you next week on the Edges and Sledges Cricket podcast. Thank you for joining us.